Next we are going to make our snap tab. So I've got my sunglasses fabric there, which has already been fused with the fleece. I've got my lining fabric, my snap, and a small piece of interfacing. First thing to do is just to add some interfacing to the area on the lining where your snap is going to be, just to reinforce it there. So I'm just going to pop that on the end there. Then we need to measure in 3 centimetres from the end of our snap. So I'm coming in 3 centimetres and I'm just going to draw a line here. And then I want to come halfway. So this is 7 centimetres in total width. So I want to come 3.5. And that's now the area where my snap is going to sit. So your snap will consist of 4 parts. You've got 2 washers. It's a bit magnetic, they're all a bit stuck together. There we go, got 2 washers, and then you've got a male and female part. So I put the male part on this side and then the female part on the wallet itself. So I want my snap to sit with the middle bit there, so I just want to sort of line up the legs there. And I'm going to make, in fact, let's draw that on with a little pen where those incisions need to go. So I just need to make 2 small snips into the fabric there, and this is the area that I've interfaced. I can fold that, make a little incision. Don't want to make it too much, just enough that I can post the legs through of my, it's my male part going on here, isn't it? There we are. So that's now posted through, and I can pop the washer on top there. And then you just want to fold and press those legs in. You can use something to sort of help you if you find it difficult, like with your hands. So get it started like that and then use your ruler if you find that easier. So there's the male part of my snap attached. I just iron round there to get rid of any of the pen marks because they are heat erasable. Okay, so that's that bit done. Now we're going to prepare the snap tab itself. So I want to turn both of my pieces of fabric over so that I'm looking at the wrong side, and I want to just press up by about 1 centimetre on both sides. So press that lining back by 1 centimetre. And then this is more tricky to press. Actually, just make sure as well that if my snap tab is sitting like this, that's the right way round for the sunglasses to go. If I had it round this way, then the sunglasses will be upside down on the wallet. So just make sure that if you're using a print like mine, that you've got it the right way. So I want to this will be the end that goes to the back, the end we're folding up. The end without the snap is the end that will go to the back of the wallet. So I'm going to press those both up by 1 centimetre. So before I clip those together, I just want to come in 1 centimetre because I've got a centimetre seam allowance. I can give myself a little guide for where I'm sewing. And then I just want to mark where my curved edges are. So I'm going to just gently curve this off. I just prefer the look to a dead straight line. So I'm just going to trace the curve there from my pattern piece. And that will give me a guide to sew along. And then I want to put these 2 right sides together with the folded edges matching up there, and then I can pin that together, pin or clip. I prefer clips actually for this bit. Let's just clip it here where these folds are so that stays put. There we go. So we're going to leave this end open and we're going to sew down here, following the curve and all the way back again. Start with a good back stitch there. Along I can. I'm sewing over 1 centimetre seam allowance, and then as I get to the end there, I'm just going to follow my curved line Just gently lifting the foot a tiny bit with each stitch. So one stitch at a time. Move that out the way, round that curve. So really slowly round the curved line there. I can take that out of the way as well. Back stitch to finish. And I will just trim around those curved edges now. And then I can turn this through to right sides out. So then we're going to just smooth these out here with my point turner. And give that a press. And now lastly, just to make this look really nice, I will just top stitch around the edge of my tab. So I've done my top stitching all the way around the edge there, pink on the top, blue on the bottom. I'm careful to miss the snap. And we're now ready to attach it to our wallet. So there's the outer part of my wallet, which I've fused earlier on with the Decoville. So that folds like that, and this snap will sit here and fold round. So I need to attach this first. I've already got a nice edge there from where I folded that under before. So I'm going to look, first of all, decide which you want to be your front. I want it to be this side, not this side, because I want the sunglasses to be facing this way. And turn that over. So you want to draw that line at 3.5 centimetres in. And then I want to know what my halfway point is. So this is 29 centimetres long. So my halfway point is going to be 14.5. So that's my halfway point there. So that's 14.5, 14.5. And then my tab here, let's find the halfway point of my tab as well. So my tab is going to line up like that. So it's exactly halfway. And once you've got that positioned, you can then pin that in place. You have got quite a few layers to go through. Whoop. Because of the Decoville lining, it feels quite stiff. And what we're going to do now is stitch through all those layers along here, down here, back here and back to make like a little rectangle there which attaches the snap, the fold over snap tab to your wallet. So at this stage you will need to sort of use, if you've got a self-leveling button on the side of your machine foot, you probably will need to use that because you've got quite a lot of layers to get through here. If you don't, then what you can do is you can roll up a bit of fabric and just pop that behind, or if you've got a little humper jumper, one of those little plasticky things that you can sit behind your foot, you can use that as well, just because you can see how even with that self-leveling mechanism in place, my sewing machine foot wants to tilt towards the back, and what will happen there is it's sort of having to sort of come over that hump. And if you just put something underneath there, even if it's just a bit of rolled up fabric, then it will level it off, and it won't do that thing where it just sticks in one place. So even though I've got my self-leveling doodah on, if I just fold up a bit of fabric from my offcuts and stick that behind my foot there, then that stops that problem of it not wanting to go forward. You can also increase your stitch length. I'm just under 3. So I'm lining that up with there, and now hopefully, because I've levelled my foot off, it will actually go forward rather than sticking in the same place. There you go, it's so much easier. And all you need to do is really bung a bit of fabric behind your foot to make it go. I'm just going to get rid of that bit of thread that's in the way. Okay, so we're going to come all the way down here, until I line up with my other stitching. Okay, so lift my foot, swivel around, and my magic bit of fabric is going to go behind there again. Put my foot back down, and that will let me come forward. So I'm going to come forward 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches, let's say. I want to make it nice and strong, so I'm just going to do a little rectangular shape here. Up again, this way it won't have a problem because we're sewing on the high up bit of fabric. So it's 4 stitches, and then just to finish off I'll come back to where I started and do a couple of stitches under there. A couple of stitches just to secure, and back again. Okay, so you can see that I've got a nice rectangle there now. And that's secured my tab to my fabric. Okay, so that's the tab attached. Let's now mark the position for where the popper is going to be on the front here. So to do that accurately, let's tilt you this way so you can see, I want to put my pockets in place. They're going to sit like that on my fabric, and then fold that over. And then this is going to come across like this. So let's just, what I like to do is just draw with chalk or a pen or what have you on there, and I fold that over, bearing in mind there's going to be some contents as well. And there, can you see how I've then made an impression here of where I want that to sit? Now just to tell you, that is about 2 centimetres in, just over 2.5 centimetres in, but I find that if you just fold that over, it kind of gives you a marking point. Then we're going to attach the female part of the snap. So make a little incision to either side that the legs can go through. And you're going through the Decoville as well as the fabric. There we go. Put the washer on. Fold the legs in on themselves, either side of that washer. If you have slightly weaker hands, you might want to get someone to help you with that. There we go, and that fits really nicely. So that's my snap tab done. You might want to just sort of place that in there and just check that it fits before you kind of make your incisions and cut the hole, because you could just draw the circle round and put it there and just double check before you make those incisions. But if you've kind of transferred that mark, it should hopefully be in the right place. Okay, so we're now going to attach the outer to the interior. So we just want to trim around the curved corners here. So just trimming away that extra bit of fabric around the curved corners at this stage. And if you want to leave them square, of course you can leave them square, in which case you would have left the Decoville square as well. And then, oops, one more. Okay, then we're going to place our panel on there. So you want to make sure that you've got the snap on the front, tab on the back, and that your pocket is the right way up. I wouldn't want it to be this way up, for example, because then this would hang down and my zip pull would be on the wrong side. So we want it to be this way up. Make sure there's nothing trapped in there. Okay, so we're going to line up all those raw edges and clip in place, and then we're going to just stitch through all layers to attach everything. And don't worry if not everything, if you've got some scraggly bits that hang off the end, we can cover all of that up with our binding, and we can trim down a little bit as well. You've obviously got quite a lot of layers, so you probably do have a few kind of areas where not everything matches up 100%. That's just fine. There we are. So all the way around the edge now. You can see that everything's nice. At this stage as well, what I want to do is keep this out of the way. So I'll just fold that back, and actually, rather than use a pin, I'm just going to stick that back with a bit of tape, just so that it's out the way. Now I don't have to worry about accidentally getting it caught. So the next thing, and I can even do that whilst I've got the tape out, let's get you out the way too, mister. Okay, so everything's kept out of the way. I'm going to sew looking at this side, and I'm just going to go all the way around the edge, just stitching that in place. Before I do so, let's also just trim off around the corners here as well. Now everything's lined up. I prefer to do it this way because then everything is the same. It's harder to line up the corners, the curved corners, and it's easier to just do it like this and just line them up and trim them down, I find. Okay, so we're going to now sew all the way around the outside edge. So I don't really mind where I start and finish, and I'm just going to be sewing within the seam allowance. This is just a holding stitch, just to hold everything in place. Much easier to obviously hold everything in place now prior to attaching the binding. If you try to stitch everything together and attach the binding in one go, then good luck with that. Just travel around that corner. Try to give yourself a bit of space around the edge of your machine as well for this, because you do have a larger panel now. This, and I know it's a bit early to mention the C word, but this would be quite a good frizzy presy. Especially for anyone who might be going on a little cruise in January, you never know. A winter break. Let's make a nice Christmas present to take. I just want to keep going until you come back to where you started, and that's all layers now attached. Right then, we're getting really close to the finishing line. So everything is sewn together, it's all attached, which is lovely. So now what we can do, any little bits of thread I like to get rid of. Okay, so now what we can do is attach our binding. So once again, let's get this out of the way. My sellotape came off before, it's not the stickiest. And then we're going to come all the way around the edge with the binding. Now let's do the join somewhere. We're going to have to do a join in the binding. So I'll choose somewhere that's not too tricky to manage. So maybe at the bottom here, I'll do my join. So what I'll do is I'll start off by sewing the binding onto the inside of my wallet, and I want to leave myself with a nice bit of a tail there that I can use to make my join. So if I start by putting a clip there, what we're going to do is we're going to sew within here, we're going to sew in this crease here in the inside of the binding. I'm going to stitch all the way around. So because we're with the curves, this is a good way to handle it. So we'll put some clips on. with some bindings you have a deeper fold here than here. I don't think that's the case with this one. If you were working with a binding that has a deeper fold on one of the sides, then sew the first edge with the shallower fold, and then the deeper fold will let you come around to the front. So when we come to the corner, it kind of helps to, with the curved corners anyway, to kind of give it a press prior to stitching. So I just fold the binding in half as it will be as it's finished, and then I just want to sort of train it round the corner, and I can use my iron to help me. I'll give it a really good press around that corner there, and that's training that binding round the corner. When you come to sew it, that's going to be a bit easier for you, because it's already been told what it wants to do. And then plenty of clips will help. So normally when I'm doing binding, I don't worry about you choose a starting point, start sewing, and then just work my way round. So continue all the way round until you get back to the beginning again. There we are, so that's clipped all the way round. The curves are pressed, and I've got a nice long tail of binding to either side there, and a nice big gap here, and I'm going to put my join in my binding here. So I'm going to start by sewing the binding down, and then I'll show you how we're going to tackle this join. Right, so let's start here, and I'm going to stitch within that join. Whoop. My binding is right on the edge there, back stitch there, and I'm going to just come around and really take it nice and slowly. It's probably one of the trickier parts of this project. So when we get to the corners, we just want to still maintain our stitches within that curve there. And having pressed it will make it easy. You can just swivel that binding around a bit so it's out of the way. You will have this bit here which will be very wrinkly. Much easier on the straight bits, a bit trickier on the curves. So actually you can see here down in the corner, one thing that you can do is just pinch a go day out and lay it flat, so then that might help with getting around that corner there. You can see how the binding is following that curve. And actually another thing that can help is if you reduce your stitch length right down, so I'm now at 2.2 on my stitch length. A smaller stitch length is always better for curves as well, because if you think your stitches are a series of straight lines that are getting around a curved line, then the smaller they are, the easier it will be. Put them back up now, otherwise it will take forever and a day. So I'm back up to my normal stitch length now, 2.4, 2.6. Carry straight on. I'm coming past the zip now, so it's obviously the zip puller is nice and out of the way, and I don't have to worry about any of those metal staples or any bulkiness to get over there. Once again, I'll pinch a little go day out. Reduce my stitch length. Bring myself around that corner. Back onto the straight and narrow again, stitch length back up. Oh, what's happened here? The sellotape's come undone. Let's get that tab out of the way. Try not to let your binding stretch as you're going around as well, because you want your curves that you press to be in the right place. So I want to leave myself with a nice long tail, so I'll stop there and backstitch. And that's now been sewn on all the way around there. We'll tackle the join next. So we've got our 2 tails of binding here. Now you've got 2 options for how you want to join this. So option number 1 is simply that you can trim this down, fold that back, imagine that's trimmed down, and then lay one binding on top of the other and just join it. And then you will have a straight fold there that will look like that, and that's absolutely fine. There is another way, however, which is to do a diagonal join. And actually, if you look at bindings, let's see, you can see there's a diagonal join there. Lots of bindings will have diagonal joins in them, and this will give you an almost invisible finish. So let's try a diagonal join. So you want your binding to be overlapping, and if we just trim a piece of binding off, you want your 2 pieces of binding to overlap by the same width as the binding itself. So if I measure that, this binding is just about 4 centimetres, just under 4 centimetres wide. So you want these 2 to overlap by 4 centimetres. So if I lie this one down here, and let's trim that down to about there, and then I lie this one down on top of it, I want the 2 bindings to overlap by the same width as the binding when it's flattened out. So if I use that as a guide, then trimming off the top layer of binding only, you can see that that binding is now overlapping by the same width as the binding. So it should overlap by 4 cms. Okay, so now what we want to do is put these bindings right sides together, and this is why, you know, it's good to have a nice a bit of slack here, a bit of a gap. You want to put these right sides together, okay, but you're not going to sew them straight, you're going to twist. So let's put them right sides together to begin with, and then twist like this, and then open that binding up flat. And then what you're going to do is you're going to sew a diagonal line across here. So I get my pin. So you want those to be, you're kind of making a square there. Where you've overlapped the binding by the same width, it should, you know, you can meet the 2 corners up and you should be able to make a square. And then what you're going to do is you're going to sew a diagonal line across that square. You're going to trim off that, and then when that lies down flat, you have a nice diagonal join in your binding, okay? So we'll go over to my sewing machine now, and we're just going to sew down here, trim that off, press it, and then close the bound edge. This is just a little bit awkward, but you kind of want to get those 2 pieces of binding matched up so that the corners are matching up and they're together at right angles. Start in this corner over here. Oh, nimble fingers. Right, that's come out of the alignment. Let's pop that back up. There we go. So I can see that my 2 pieces of binding are right sides together and at right angles. Start off with a back stitch, and I want to sew all the way down, and I want my sewing to end at this corner here. So if you find it tricky to judge, and this is the first time you're doing this, you could always draw that line on with a pen or chalk first. can you see how I've now created this right angled triangle here, and I've come into the corner here and into the corner here. So you can see now that when I put that back flat again, I've got that diagonal join in my binding there, so I can now trim off anything, and do check that you've done it the right way round before you trim anything. Doop, 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 doop. Because you can undo stitching, but you can't undo cutting. Okay, and then I'll just finger press that join nice and flat. And then I'll just clip that back down. And then I just want to join up where I've finished my stitching up here. I want to join that up. I'm going to sew across that join and join back up here, so that then look at how nice and neat that diagonal join is. Okay, let's go to my sewing machine to do that. So I've just plugged it in where I left off, so I can do a little back stitch now. And I'm just going to carry on where I left off. I'm just going to come down to where I finished off sewing before and backstitch. That's our binding applied. We're going to now fold it round to the front and fold it in. That's where my join is there, so I just want to fold that in and bring that round to the front. Now there might be areas where it fits really nicely, say for example just there, and then there might be areas where you've got a little bit of overhanging Decoville or a bit of fabric, and then it won't quite stretch happily round. So what I like to do at this stage is just to trim it very carefully. So I don't want to trim my binding, this bit of the binding of course, so I want to make sure that that's well and truly out of the way. And then I like to use my my ruler and my rotary cutter just to trim that down. I want to keep it nice and even all the way, so I'm not going to go crazy. Get my bigger ruler there, my big ruler. Okay, so I just want to make sure that I'm keeping it nice and square. I don't want to end up kind of spoiling the, you know, all the hard work that I've done in making everything nice and square. So I'm just going to trim off any little extra bits that are going to stop me from being able to, like this bit here, that will stop me from being able to fold my binding over, and that will give myself a nice clean edge there that's even all the way down to fold my binding around. I'll do the same on all four sides. If there are, I mean obviously if it's folding over fine and there aren't any little overlappy bits, then you absolutely don't need to worry about it, but if there are, then just trim it down, but just do so carefully. You don't want to get too scissor happy. You don't want to kind of trim it too far down. This is tricky because the snap underneath is causing the ruler to want to rock, so I won't put too much pressure on my ruler right now because it will just slide straight off again. You can just sort of trim down any extra, and that will help you to be able to fold it round to the front side. So I've trimmed that down, and that means that this now folds round in all areas really, really neatly. I just want to do the same now to the corners. So sometimes around the corner it will just fold round really, really nicely, and then other times it might struggle. So if you do have that, again, just very, very gently. You don't want to be too scissor happy, but you can just shave off the tiniest little toenail. There's a gross comparison, but it's kind of like a little toenail of fabric, just to help you to get your binding to curve round and sit on the inside there. Okay, so once you've done that, then you want to bring your binding round across all edges and just clip it into place, and then we're going to finally stitch down the binding on the right side. So once you're happy with everything, then we're going to bring our ironing board back up to the table and bring this all round. So you just, for the corners, you just pop that round to the front. And like I say, trim away if it won't go. And then you can use your iron to help you if you like. And then, so if there's anywhere where it won't go, you can just press it through. And then you're just going to bring your binding round to the front. And once again, this is where the clips are your best friends, because you can just clip, fold your binding round and clip it in place. And there are a few different ways to finish binding. I'm just going to come in and top stitch on here, but if you want to, you can hand stitch your binding to finish. It is a bit tricky to hand stitch because you've got the Decovil there, which is a bit stiffer, but you could always hand stitch. If you press the curves, they will, you know, that will train them a bit better, and they will sit nicely. Any little threads you can just snip off or get rid of at this stage. Any little thread tails, any bits of fraying fabric. Keep it nice and even around the edge. Loads and loads of lovely clips. So I've now come all the way around the edge, clipping that binding in place, pressing and teasing it over where I need to. And I'm going to go over to my sewing machine now and stitch that all the way around. And those stitches will be visible on the inside. Don't worry if you miss a little bit on the inside and you don't quite get it right. You know, if it kind of catches the pink on the inside, don't worry too much. Okay, so I'm going to start off somewhere on the back. I can start and finish on the back somewhere. I want to get my needle down in the correct position there, so it's right on the edge of the binding, but not so near the edge that I'm going to worry that I'm going to come off altogether. Let's fold that up. I'm having difficulty lining things up here only because my camera stand is really in the way right now to get you in nice and close so you can see what I'm doing, and obviously you won't have that problem. The clips are catching from the other side, they're catching on the camera stand, so you won't have to worry about that when you're doing your one. If you see any bits of thread, you can tuck them in now. And I'm just keeping nice and close to the edge, but at the same time not going off the edge. I'm just going to come around the corner now, around the curve. Keeping it nice and slow. And just sort of move it round one stitch at a time. And that's all stitched and finished, so I'm just going to trim off any thread tails where I began and finished my stitching. Now you can see that you have got a little bit of visible stitching where I attach the pockets. I'm not going to let that worry me. I could always go in and any of those pocket stitches I could just unpick if I wanted to, but I don't think I'm going to really, I don't think they're going to be a big problem. You know, when you're using, you're not going to really notice them. So I give it one last press, trim off any threads. There we go. And that's all finished. One last touch. Always time for one last little touch, which is to just pop my bit of yellow ribbon through my zip. Now this is tricky because it's a very small hole, but what I like to do is fold the ribbon in half, tuck it through the hole at the end of my zip, and then use a pin to pull it through. And then I can take my two ribbon tails there and just paste them through that loop. There we go. And I've got a nice ribbon to finish my zip pull there as well. So that's my document wallet finished, with 4 spaces for passports, a document wallet for my car hire, my keys. I think I'm going to put my coins and my money in there in the zip pocket, nice and safe. Boarding passes in these 2, and credit cards, etc. in these. So I'm all ready to go. So if you are going on holiday this summer, wherever that may be, I hope that you have a wonderful time, and I hope you enjoy making your document or your travel document wallet with me. And thank you for watching. Bye for now.